No matter who we are or where we're from, most of us want a fair say in the decisions that affect our lives. While our politics, families, and livelihoods may differ, we share a desire for the freedom to be who we want to be, say what we want to say, and go where we want to go. And across time, people like us have joined across our races, places, and genders to push closer to that freedom. Across time, we've also seen power-hungry groups try to silence our voices, overturn the will of the people, and hoard wealth and resources for themselves. Historically, these tactics have involved significant bloodshed. In the 21st century, however, democracies are rarely overthrown through violent force. Instead, they fall apart when democratically elected leaders use their power to undermine the free societies that put them there. So why do we support and elect leaders like this, even though we believe in freedom, liberty, and democracy? To understand this, we need to know a little bit more about authoritarianism and the psychology that enables it. Authoritarianism is a system of power and a method of governing that is based on rigid obedience to authority, denying personal freedoms, punishing dissent, and eliminating checks on power. Authoritarian leaders know their policies benefit only themselves and their collaborators, so they manipulate human psychology to control people and manufacture support. Some of the strategies in the authoritarian playbook include pitting groups against one another with dehumanizing and us or them rhetoric. This divide and rule strategy creates barriers between people, making us believe it's impossible to come together to push for change. Making violence seem like a normal part of politics by encouraging and rallying people for political violence and using state power to punish opposition or dissent. Breaking the public's trust in the people and practices that keep our democracy strong and make sure leaders are accountable to the people, like free and fair elections. Blaming specific groups for the nation's problems, a divide and distract strategy to split our power and keep us from concentrating on real solutions and holding leaders accountable for harmful policies. This collective blame often targets people based on their identities, like immigrants, certain religious or racial groups, or LGBTQ+ folks, or certain jobs like journalists, teachers, or librarians. Bombarding the public with conspiracy theories, violent rhetoric, and contradictory policy positions so that our brains get stuck in stress response, leaving us overwhelmed or numb, stifling creativity or fostering despair as it becomes harder for us to hope and to imagine new possibilities. These practices are reinforced by broadcasting and repeating misinformation and distorted narratives. As calls for loyalty rise above all else, individuals sacrifice aspects of who they are in order to fall in line. Publicly, civil liberties fall by the wayside, mixed with false promises of increasing wealth, upward social mobility, and public order. The cornerstone of this manipulation lies in taking advantage of our brain's stress responses. When our brain detects danger, it triggers mental and physical reactions intended to keep us safe, called the human stress response. While these reactions have served human survival well, they have been exploited by authoritarian leaders to maintain and grow their power. Some of the reactions they take advantage of include drawing split-second conclusions based on whatever evidence is immediately available, impeding our ability to make rational decisions. Drastically narrowing our focus, which is unhelpful for seeing through simplistic, divisive rhetoric. Ramping up paranoia and anticipating threats at every turn. Blocking us from building relationships with people different from us. Numbing emotions under extreme stress, keeping us from sustaining hope through ongoing political turmoil. Further, our brains respond to threats to our identities like race, religion, or gender, much like how we react to physical threats. If we feel excluded or dehumanized based on a core identity, we may respond with fight or flight instincts, filtering everything through the lens of danger. If we strongly identify with a group that we see as being under threat, we are more likely to support leaders who promise protection, even if it means reducing others' rights. On top of that, we're spending more and more time with people who think like us, in person and online. The more that we're immersed in our echo chambers, the tighter we bond with our group, and the greater our sense of belonging. At the same time, the more separated we are from those who think differently, the easier we are manipulated to believe they are out to get us. As the fear of others grows, our brains prioritize survival and in-group belonging. So even if people close to us support political violence or curtailing civil rights, we avoid questioning those positions. Therefore, gradually and intentionally, authoritarians sow fear and make people feel powerless to expand and sustain their control. So how can we counter these dynamics? Research and experience from around the world shows that we have many effective strategies to protect our freedoms and democracies. As individuals, we build our resilience against authoritarian tactics by recognizing when we are being manipulated or divided. To do this, we can make it a priority to connect with other people, build strong, trusting relationships, pay attention to how political language or actions make us feel. When we notice ourselves feeling stressed, we can take a moment to step back, breathe, notice the feeling. This helps us to focus our energy and align our actions with our values. Train our brains to recognize and challenge extreme political language. Practice identifying and rejecting divisive rhetoric and harmful us or them attitudes in media and public discussions. Challenge misconceptions that portray the entire other side as hostile towards us. By questioning these assumptions, we create more opportunities to collaborate and find common cause on issues we care about most. And appreciate the complexity of human beings. Embrace our potential for growth and change. Stay curious about other people. In addition to these practices, collective action is essential to build and sustain a pro-democracy movement with the broadest and most effective participation possible. We don't need to start from scratch. We can learn, teach, and apply time-tested strategies used by people around the world to successfully combat authoritarianism. We've learned that we need to organize movements and coalitions across differences of beliefs, identities, and geographies, reaching beyond our usual suspects to build bridges across divides. Support and center those directly targeted and harmed by authoritarians. Address the needs and concerns of affected individuals and groups. Identify and name influential figures who use their platforms to dehumanize and divide people. Demand accountability for their actions. Insist that organizations and institutions that enable authoritarian practices answer for what they've done and face appropriate consequences, and organize accordingly. Spread accurate information. Defend credible journalists and media outlets, and help people learn how to spot fake news and think critically to combat disinformation. Collaborate across differences of approach, including but not limited to nonviolent direct actions like protests, strikes, and civil disobedience, community organizing, political lobbying and dialogue, mediation and conflict resolution. Recognize the need for constructive disruption to block authoritarianism while building inclusive democracies. We all can help counter authoritarianism and work for a more just and equitable society. Through taking action both individually and together, we have the power to uphold the principles of democracy for present and future generations. By joining across our differences, we can create a world where freedom, dignity, and democracy are for all of us, no exceptions.